So that whole storyline of, oh, he's poor and his wife has left him and he can't see his kids, all fiction. Hi guys, welcome back to the Shannon Show. Hello if you're new. So today's video is going to be a Crown versus real life, specifically on the event of the infamous double intrusion by Micheal Fagan, in which he broke into the Buckingham Palace twice and actually did get into the Queen's chamber where she was asleep. Wild, I know. And a bit legendary if I do say so myself. I hope everybody is doing as well as can be, and I really do hope everybody is being as proactive as possible in supporting the Black Lives Matter movement. And if you're still on the lookout for some resources, I've linked some in the description. Feel free to comment down below your thoughts on my commentary. I'm always up for a chat, I'm always up for a debate. And if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And if you didn't, give it a dislike. No hard feelings. And if you really like this video, consider subscribing and helping your girl out. So, Micheal Fagan, what a guy. So obviously this is concerning episode 5 in season 4 of The Crown, and we kind of get a whole episode, so it's not necessarily an interview or anything, it's just an event. In terms of what I thought of the episode, it's a pretty interesting episode. I was really invested in it, it was well written, but then when I read up on the real life events, I felt a bit scammed. I felt a bit bamboozled. So let's talk about the similarities and the differences. And by the way, my sources are from interviews with Micheal Fagan from The Independent and The Guardian. So the first thing let's talk about is the casting. Now the casting for The Crown is pretty spot on in terms of resemblance. I wouldn't say it is like Micheal Fagan. I feel like the actor can get away with it, but it definitely isn't as close as a resemblance as I'm used to. And what's quite funny is that Micheal Fagan has actually come out and said that he didn't like the casting because the guy was ugly. And they made him, and by default they made him look ugly, which I thought was quite funny. I feel like the person that they casted could get away with it. From pictures that I've seen, I guess, you know, from the hairline is a bit similar. I feel like the nose, I feel like the actor's nose is a bit thinner, but he can get away with it. But I think the key difference is that obviously the actor looks a lot more disheveled than the real life Micheal Fagan. The real life Micheal Fagan wasn't as disheveled as they made him seem in The Crown, and I think the look of the actor, I'm not sure whether it's makeup or it's just genetics, you know, some people, you know the aging just be advancing, you know, but obviously he suits the actor's face. I'm trying to say it without sounding rude, but the actor's face suits the storyline. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Obviously with most castings you don't really expect it to be spot on, but with The Crown I kind of look out for when they do get it right. But I feel like the actor can get away with it. But what do you think? Do you feel like they could have done a better job with the casting in terms of resemblance, or do you not think that it matters? Personally, I don't really think that it matters or it's a big deal. Now let's talk about the similarities and the differences in the real life event. Obviously a key thing is Micheal Fagan's motive, and the motive that the Crown writ for him is pretty much the crux of this whole storyline. In The Crown, he's unemployed, he's struggling to find work, his wife has left him for another man, he's taken the kids, the social worker says he can't see the kids, he can't fix his house, the council was telling him he needs to go speak to the job centre is telling him he needs to go speak to the council. His MP is very dismissive and kind of talks to him like he's an idiot and is like, oh, you know, if you want to talk to somebody, go talk to the Queen. And that's where the Crown writ his motive in for breaking into Buckingham Palace so that he could go and speak to the Queen about the state of Britain, because, you know, unemployment was really high, welfare benefits were pretty shit back then, and people were struggling and people were suffering. And that's pretty much what the storyline is. And I feel like the storyline kind of builds this kind of poverty porn working class hero. He's going there to do, you know, to represent the working class. And I was rooting for this storyline as a fellow working class person. But then when I was reading up the story now, I felt a little bit led on. I felt a little bit led on because in real life, he didn't really have that much motive. Yes, he was unemployed. There was other things going on in his life as well. Yes, his wife did leave him at the time. But he was under the influence. But the main thing is he was under the influence of drugs. And in his interviews, he said that he didn't really have a real motive for breaking into Buckingham Palace. He just did it once, and then it was like, oh my God, I just broke into Buckingham Palace. Let me try it again. And then did it again. So there wasn't really any integrity behind his break-in. So that was a bit disappointing. So really and truly, it was just on drugs and having an adventure. He wasn't necessarily a working class hero. So then that kind of leads into his backstory. Obviously, I've pretty much said his backstory that kind of weaves into his motives. And his backstory is pretty similar. He was unemployed, but it's not like he was unemployed because he had a little illegal side hustle. He was a drug dealer, so so he wasn't poor. He had a little hustle stack. You know what I'm saying? All the hustlers out there might be on unemployment, but they got their little, under the table drug dealer hustle money. He wasn't destitute. He probably did have a little bit of chump change, especially in those times, because a lot of people probably needed something to, relieve the stress. His wife did leave him, but they did get back together, which makes me believe that their separation was a bit exaggerated for the storyline. They did get back together because they were business partners, so they ended up getting back together and doing their business together. So that whole storyline of, he's poor and his wife has left him and he can't see his kids, all fiction, because he had a pretty good relationship with his children because his children were even involved in the business. I shouldn't be laughing because times are hard. And another key thing is they made it seem like he had mental health issues, like prolonged mental health issues, but up until the point where he was put in the mental health hospital by the police, he hadn't been formally diagnosed with anything. So again, that weaving into, oh my God, feel so sorry for this, destitute working class guy, all fiction. So the first break-in. So the depiction of the first break-in is pretty similar to what actually went down. Of course, they just concised it down. He scaled the fence, he went in, he had a little bit of a wander, he had a little bit of drink. A maid saw him, I believe, and then he basically ran out of there before he was caught. In the Crown, obviously that was then reported. The Queen and the security knew about it, and they decided they were going to keep it hush-hush because obviously their security was under review, but they really didn't want to heighten up the security. So they kind of just swept the apparent break-in under the rug. Now, in the real life version, there was a bit more of an adventure. He went into multiple chambers. He went into Diana's chamber. He went into Charles' chamber. So it was a bit more of an adventure. He did have a little bit of drink. He had some cheese and crackers as well. And he was caught by a maid and he did disappear, but the maid was actually dismissed, and because he disappeared, they basically just thought that maybe she had just saw something. So I'm not sure if there was actually a formal report or if the Queen even knew about the first break-in. I haven't been able to find anything concrete, but from what I've read, it seems like the maid was pretty much dismissed, and it wasn't really taken seriously, and they probably didn't even think there was a break-in because security systems that they had in place weren't working. They were malfunctioning in real life and as they depicted it in the Crown. But the second Crown is where we have a lot of differences here. The break-in was pretty much the same. The details of how he's cut himself were slightly different. In the Crown, he cuts himself on the window. In real life, he apparently cut himself on a glass ashtray that broke when he came in. Obviously, in the Crown, he wanders around a bit and ends up back in the Queen's chamber, and this time she's actually in there because in the first time she was away in Windsor, and obviously she's asleep in the bed. In the Crown, he wakes her up.
What are you doing? It's
he's like, thinking that he's Philip, and then she realizes that he's not. And then it's a kind of hold-up situation, but not really a hold-up situation. It's a kind of, oh my god, there is this disheveled-looking man who looks like he could potentially hurt me in my room, but I'm calling for help and no one's coming, so I'm just going to entertain him. And they have this deepest conversation where he talks about the condition of London, the high unemployment rate, the standard of living, and how things are very difficult for poor people. And it's a very impassioned speech, very, working class hero story. He's, representing the working class person. And, it's something that a lot of people will invest in, especially working class people. As a working class person, I was like, yeah. The Queen is pretty sympathetic. Eventually, a maid does come in, and the maid then calls for help because obviously nobody's answering the calls and the alarm system isn't working. Then obviously he's arrested and the Queen's like, telling them to go easy on him. And then after she has this talk with Margaret Thatcher where she's kind of like, oh, we need to help out the little guy, and, showing the Queen in a sort of socialist light. But the talk between them, and therefore the talk between the Queen and Margaret Thatcher, where the Queen stands up for working class people, all fiction. Absolute fiction. And I felt very betrayed. When I read up on what really happened as a working class person, I was pretty invested in that storyline. So I felt a little bit cheated, and it kind of felt a little bit like poverty porn to me, thinking about it now. But in a real life version, what happened was, obviously the Queen did think it was Philip, realised it wasn't, and then ran out of there and called for help. She did struggle to find help because nobody answered the little alarm switchboard, but she did go out and get help. So she was just like, there's a crazy guy in my room, nope, and ran out of there. And obviously he was arrested. He does say that somebody offered him a drink, but I doubt that. I feel like he was just adding a little bit to the story to make it interesting. You know how old people like to do that. No deep talk. The Queen definitely was not having a talk with Thatcher, sticking up for working class people. That was all fiction. So yeah, I do feel a little bit cheated. I do. But even though I feel a little bit cheated, I do appreciate the storyline. I do think it was a well-written storyline. And I think it definitely was more interesting than the real life events, in my opinion. I feel like the fiction that they created, even though it was a bit cheeky, it was well written, and I did enjoy the storyline. I did enjoy it. But I'd be really interested to hear from you guys, especially working class people. Do you feel, now that you know the truth, do you feel a little bit cheated, and do you feel like the storyline now just seems a little bit poverty porn? Because they were doing a lot with the job centre, and just, him just having the worst life ever, basically. I'd be interested to hear from you guys, because I was just like, wow, they really just made that up. But yeah, like I said, I still enjoyed the episode though, but I do feel a little bit cheated. But I also kind of appreciate the writing. Bit of a weird one for me. But yeah, do let me know what you think now, if you didn't know about the true events. Do you feel a bit cheated or not, or do you feel like it's fair game? Obviously, it has creative license. It is a show, it has to create some drama. And like I said, I'm always here for the drama. And it was a good episode in my opinion. But I'd be interested to hear from you guys. Or do you feel like actually the real life version would have been better? Him on the real life version would have been better because, it was high on shrooms and then wandering around Buckingham Palace. I feel like that could have been a storyline in itself as well. But yeah, I do think it was, even though he is not technically a working class hero, I do think it's a legendary story. I mean, he broke into Buckingham Palace twice. I mean, that is ridiculous, awesome, and also embarrassing for the royal family. Like, somebody literally broke in twice, and he's good for just stealing the wine, because I might have stolen a little something else, you know. Because he could have stolen, you know, quite a bit and gotten away with it if he didn't come back. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's pretty much my thoughts on the real life versus the crown. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on it and the interpretation and the similarities and the differences. For those of you waiting on my reactions, you know what? I've got to apologize for leading you guys on, because I am going to put the reactions on hold. But yeah, if you like this video, subscribe, put that notification bell on so you know when the next video is dropping. I'm also trying to get to 2.2k subscribers. I just hit 2.1k, so thank you to everybody who helped me reach that goal. Until next time, guys, bye.